Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fourth podcast of season 11 for PCN. I'm Saul Goodman Jr., and I'll be your host tonight, joined by the legendary Dorsey.
Hello.
My co-host, as always, also have Bentner in here. I have Jomo from League 2. We got a League 2 representative.
How's it going, guys?
Also have Platypus Thrust.
Hello.
And Steel Data. Great.
Copycat.
They're really going to be able to tell you guys apart. All right. So tonight's discussion is going to be the mid-season review. We'll look at each league, see how the teams are doing, how the stack-ups are going, and kind of give predictions moving forward of what we think may change or what may occur going forward. We'll start with the Super League. Looking at the top 10 as it stands right now, we have Lazio in first place. Second place, we have AC Milan, trailing them by 5 points. Benfica, 4 points behind Milan. Then we have Tottenham, Juventus, Lyon, Chelsea, Atlanta, Inter, and Bayer Leverkusen, who's made a miraculous recovery from the bottom of the league. So starting with those top 10, what are we thinking as far as who's going to end up on top?
I guess having played most of these teams, of course, that we all have, Lazio obviously looks very strong. They haven't really suffered through a period of bad form yet, so we'll have to see if they can keep it going. But they're favorites for me. But I would say watch out for Benfica as well, because they're starting to really hit their stride, and we all know how good they are when they play well.
Yeah, I would say touching on Lazio, they've started their kind of gauntlet of teams, so to speak. On Sunday, they played Atlanta and they played AC Milan in the marquee matchup. Tomorrow, they will play Juventus and Inter Milan. So they're starting to play some of the better teams on their squads, I think, or on their schedule. So I think we'll start to see what they're really made of moving forward. Yeah,
definitely. We actually just played them. It wasn't this past game day, but just before, and they beat us. We felt unfortunate with a mistake at the end, but they're a really good team, so I wouldn't be surprised to see them ride through this stretch of difficult teams.
I'm gonna say Benfica is, even though they got like 32 points, they still got 2 games ahead, and like even though we beat them, like they still got a good team around them and all in general. But I can't like disagree on AC Milan and Lazio like doing amazing as well this season. Like with AC Milan just getting only 1 loss and Lazio only having 2 losses, like it's still anybody's game, honestly.
I'd say my pick would be Juventus. They slowly crept up in the table. They're now back in the top 6. Only 2 losses on the season, so they just have had games where they haven't been able to win. They have 6 draws. I mean, they still have 8 wins in general, but I mean they've moved up the table and they're in the works of making some pretty big signings. So
yeah, I was just about to say the rumor mill has heard some stories that they're about to pick up some of the old Minnesota guys who had half a season banned, so they could potentially have a much more talented squad in the days to come.
Yeah, I got to throw a hat in the ring for my boys.
Of course.
But I don't know. I think the point differential is too big for anyone outside that top 3 to make a title run at this point. I think Lazio obviously is the most interesting team based upon, this has been a mid-table team for a few seasons, and can they keep up with it the second half? And then Benfica, obviously, they're starting to heat up. The offense is looking better. But I don't know. I got faith in my guys at Milan. I think, we got some things we know we need to figure out and things we need to improve on. And I think if we can do that, I think we're going to win the title. But there's obviously a lot of work to do to make that happen.
Looking at purely stats, Juventus is the only team that's got the same comparable stats as far as goals for and goals against when looking at Lazio and Milan next to them.
Yeah, you could also throw Lyon into that conversation as well. But the one thing that stands out to me is Lazio has always had a good defense for probably the last 2 seasons or so. I mean, they've been defending for 90% of the time, so the goals allowed haven't quite been there. But stronger defenders have come through there. Predominantly Austin and Capone have been some of the top 20 center backs to come through there. And now they've added that offense where they have the highest scoring team in the league right now. So, I mean, when you add those two, it becomes a dominant.
Yeah, they also picked up Alex Madrid. I've played with him before, and he's a very, very good center back. So he certainly helped.
Yeah, I don't doubt the talent of anyone in their defense, but they just don't have the pedigree in terms of doing this for a full season in a title race. Moreno, Madrid, and Vato, they've just never been in this kind of position. So that doesn't always matter, but it can, and it's a factor that I think that experience. I think Benfica and Milan have more experienced defenders who, in the big games towards the end of the season, in my mind, do a better job of doing their job because they won't have to worry about that kind of thing slipping into their minds.
Sure.
It reminds me a lot, like I mean, not really like the greatest example in the world, but like when it comes to complacency, it'd be season 8 River Plate. You know, like Lazio is gonna have to remain focused and not slip up at all, because I mean, you saw what happened to that River Plate team. Was this 17-point lead with 10 games left?
Yeah,
Can't-
and
Something like that.
you hate to see it, but you know, I think that is a valid point. The closer they get to that 38th game, the more that pressure is going to build up, and there's not a whole lot of room to maneuver right now. If they drop just a few games, it's going to change the race entirely.
Everyone's got to be 110%.
There's two teams that I think can, outside the top three, that will make a run potentially. I think it's Chelsea and the Juve. They've got games in hand. They're in good form, and I think they're both making additions around this time. So, if anyone can come from the outside the top three, that's the two teams. But I still think it's going to be one of those current top three. It's going to win in the end.
Outside of that, I think the only team, at least on paper, you know, Inter Milan has only given up 11 goals. It's the second best defense outside of Benfica, who struggled a little bit in those first few game days, but have really rounded out their defense the last few. You look at Inter Milan, and if they can score more, which you wouldn't think would be their problem before, you know, with Koof and Stride up front, they lost, like we said on that preseason podcast, 3 of their midfielders, right mid, left mid, and Cam, and now you're seeing a struggle to get some goals. If they can turn that around, I don't see how they couldn't make a run. They're not that far off, but title is a different story.
Yeah, I think anyone coming out outside the top 4 to make a title run pretty much has to play flawless, getting wins every game day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what teams I think in the 9, 10, 11 range can make runs for the top 6, but title run, you really got to be perfect from here on out if you're already, 10, 12 points off.
I mean, these teams will have to make the right moves in the transfer window for that to happen.
We've got 2 Tottenham players here. 28 goals for, 20 against. Not quite the differential that you guys are surrounded by. How have you guys gotten the results to make it to where you are right now without necessarily dominating one end or the other?
Yeah, definitely in the last few weeks, we've been going through a lot of like internal turnover. Our like full-time manager is out of the country right now. I'm filling in as the interim manager. And, there have been certain days where we've like struggled to get like our strongest 11 out on the pitch, like with players coming and going and not being available. So like, especially lately, we've just been having to find a way essentially. And fortunately, this last game day and this coming game day, we have a relatively not as difficult fixture list. That being said, like there aren't really that many easy games in this league, but if we continue to get good results, and we're definitely hoping to pick up some players during this transfer window, we think that we'll be in good position.
Okay.
I say we're definitely getting our back line working out really well. Definitely getting the midfield improving a lot with Killer, new signing, I say. Conflict and Johnny stepping up 100%. So I wouldn't say we're out of the race and all that, but I say we're doing good so far, and that's what I'm happy about.
Yeah,
I hope we can keep going.
Yeah, we definitely like have a lot of improvements we have to make. Like we seem to concede silly goals at times and not being able to find that finishing touch. So with a bit of luck, we can definitely turn it around and get a differential closer to what we hope for. But I mean, we're competing with a lot of good teams, especially in that like top 6, top 8 range. So like making up ground is going to be very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, getting to where you have so far with, your manager going overseas and being I wouldn't say 100% unavailable, but a lot less available. And then just having some turmoil on the team, I'd say fourth place with 31 points and only an 8 goal differential is quite astounding, I would say.
Yeah, it's not too bad, and especially for a lot of us, this is our first season in Super League as well, and our second season in PCN entirely. So we're hoping that this season we can pick up some good experience and go even stronger into the next season.
Sure.
It's a good mindset to have.
Any final thoughts on the top 10 for Super League?
I definitely echo your sentiment about Inter, because even still, they're ninth, but just in terms of when you're friendlying teams in practice and playing them in games, Inter is still so hard to play against. So seeing them that far down is surprising, and I'd be shocked if it stayed that way.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw them in the top 5 come season end. I wouldn't be surprised at all with that defense, the way it's been playing, and if they could just figure out the offense a little bit, it'd be easy for them to make a run up there. All right, with that, we will move on to the bottom 10 of Super League. Sitting in 11th place with 24 points is Manchester United. Just behind them is Manchester City. Then we have Liverpool with 23, Villarreal 21, Young Boys at 16, PSG, the legendary Stay High at 14, Arsenal in 17th place with 13. And then rounding out the bottom 3, we have NYCFC with 10 points, River Plate with 7, and America with 5. So do any of these teams kind of shock you that they're there?
For me, no. I think the table's kind of settled itself to an extent. I think United and City are two teams that can definitely finish in the top half. I think Liverpool with those 3 games in hand, I think that's a team, they may be losing a couple players, but I would expect them to push on from 13th. But I think everyone else below that, I'm not shocked by them being down there, but I think for me, the storyline in the second half is going to be the relegation battle, because New York's finally got a team in there and they look actually competitive, and America has stuck with it and they're really starting to improve. We played them in the Royal Cup on Sunday, and it's the best they've been in the 3 games we played them by far. So I think it's going to be an interesting relegation battle towards the end, and that's kind of the storyline I'm looking for in the bottom half.
I mean, from a veteran standpoint, just looking at the table, I might not be in Super League this season, but I was a little shocked to see PSG down in 16th. I don't really know exactly what's going on in Stay High's camp, but when I was checking out the table, it just shocked me a bit. Stay High's always had a steady ship for the most part, and now it's looking a little rough.
Yeah, so I know we've touched on them a fair amount. I will say that they've had a lot of changeover. That entire back line changed over, and he's lost quite a few players this season, including, so he's bringing in new people. I think there's an issue of chemistry with the people he's brought in. That defense is nowhere near what it was last season. 33 goals allowed pretty much puts you outside of the top 12 right away. And I think with all that changeover, it just hasn't quite clicked. They also lost a team of the season, Conflict, who has moved on to greener pastures for whatever reason. It's just been a lot of change for PSG, so I think it hasn't quite gelled.
I think that's always been a running thing with Stay High. He's never really been able to keep his top prospects. They've always moved on. If you were to just look at a roster of all the people that have left, they made team of the season and stuff. It's easily a title-winning team of all the people that came through his camp.
Yeah, I put together in the offseason at one point one day I was bored and put together a PSG Academy team, and it was a team that I think would compete for the Super League title if you put all those guys on one team. And looking at their goal difference and looking at the results, -5 goal difference, but 3 wins and 9 losses, that tells me that's a team that's probably, as things go throughout the season, I think the results will balance themselves more. But if they don't get those results and they stick around there, they could be in trouble. And also if they can't keep the players that continue to leave. So, I hope they figured it out, but they're in the danger zone at this point. You gotta say.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta say America, just because that was my old team last season.
As a surprise?
As a surprise, because I really did hope they would do a lot better this season. Keeping the name going. That's just my view. I hope they do a lot better this season. But how things are looking, 13 losses, only 1 win. I don't see it. I would see they may just get like relegated. I hope they do better, but I just don't see it.
They're the only team left in Super League who's still in single digits for goals for.
And they might, because they are 8 points off and because they have struggled, they might be the team to get relegated. But they got their first win. They tied New York City, and they also only lost by 1 goal to Lazio in their last 3 league games. And like I said, in the World Cup, they were easily the most competitive they've been all season. They've been active in the transfer market, so they have work to do, but the manager seems to be sticking to it, and they're improving. And the teams ahead of them aren't running away with the safety spaces, so it's possible for them, I think, to crawl out of this.
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely we played actually New York City tonight, and they weren't bad at all. America's improving. I can see one of those two teams potentially jumping. Like, no disrespect to Arsenal, I don't know, and many of the players on there, but when we've played them, they haven't been very difficult to play against. So if any team that's near there would drop, for me, it's them.
I would agree with we friendlied PSG, Arsenal, and New York. We played New York earlier tonight as well. And of the three, if I was betting, I would bet on Arsenal to fall to the relegation.
Yeah. In the short-lived preseason previews, in most part for predictions, most people had Arsenal being a team that would be around the relegation, and I mean, it's looking right so far. Especially with, Beaton making his return for AFCON. It didn't really go so well, so little signs early on, and I mean, predictions are right so far.
Yeah. I think there's definitely hope for New York City and America the way they're playing. I think River Plate to me is the team in the bottom 3 that something's got to change for them, because the way they're going, the goals they're conceding, the way that they're not being able to get 11 on for each game night, if that continues for them, I think for me that's the one team that's looking, as of now, unless something changes, they're the team to me that looks like they're going to go down for sure.
We'll just have to wait and see.
All right. Well, with that, we will move on to League One, taking a look at the top half of the table. We have Orlando Pirates in first with 36 points and a higher goal differential than Real Madrid, sitting there in second with also 36 points. Orlando also has a game in hand, to a little differentiator there. In third, we have Frankfurt with 34. Tied with them, we have Dortmund with 34. Valencia is in fifth with 32 points. Sevilla in sixth. AS Monaco in seventh. Leipzig in eighth with 25 points. And then rounding out the top half is Braga with 24 points. So same question as before. Which teams do you think could end up winning the league this season?
A little personal bias here, but I think the two best teams in the division are Orlando and Real Madrid. I don't think, as far as complete sides go, like all the other teams, I don't think they really compare. Orlando and Real Madrid have the best, well, I mean, what's it called? Orlando and Dortmund are tied for the best defense, but as far as offenses go, you can't look no further than Orlando and Real Madrid.
I wouldn't sleep on Frankfurt. Hinkley's putting together a good team. We friendlied them multiple times, and they seem to have a good squad.
They're not a bad team by any means. I'm just saying that I don't think they have what it takes to win the league.
Yeah, I think now Orlando's finally kind of settled in, and I think they should be the favorite. But also Real Madrid's finally gotten their shit together after a slow start. But Frankfurt and Dortmund are right there, and I think those four, on current form, on goal difference, I think those four are going to be your contenders. And one team may kind of eventually get on a run, but if they don't, if no one team kind of gets on a run, I think this is going to go down to the last game day or two.
Yeah, that's just been the story of the season so far for the League One teams. No one's been really able to get it going. There's been a draw here, loss there. Yeah, I mean, like you said, if one team just gets on a run, there's a lose.
Yeah, I think a little bit different from Super League. There are 3 teams in League One that have 2 losses. Orlando, Dortmund, and Sevilla actually in 6th, but they have 2 games in hand on a fair amount of the teams. So I think there's a little bit more competition. If Sevilla wins those 2 games, they're going to be sitting at 37 points, sitting in first, barring the Orlando Pirates game. and the Dortmund game. So I think there's a lot more competition here, and I think this is one of those races that could actually come, like Dorsey was saying, come down to that last game day. I don't think it's as clear cut as you're suggesting, though, Vic.
And my thing, we're going to get this later with the transfer section, but with Madrid is that Evan looks like he's on his way to Juve,
He
and
is.
Juve personally, I think you need to sell your story because you're sitting there advertising yourself to go to Super League team for him. So, are you sticking around, or is there more people from Madrid going to be leaving this team?
I can neither confirm nor deny the statements against me at this time. The glove does not fit. I must acquit.
Refer all questions to your attorney.
Yeah. So just that's a factor, though. That's a
Yeah,
Madrid.
cool. I'll give you my lawyer's number.
They're on a good run, but if they lose, 1, 2, 3, 4 starters.
Yeah, so the one thing I do know about Madrid is that they put King Evan up at cam, and then all of a sudden that offense started clicking, and now he's gone. So I have to wonder who's replacing him and what that's going to look like now, because I know there were some struggles on that offensive end before he took over.
Yeah, I think it's finally time to unleash the big Rick on the league. Ricky's ready. Nah, but for real though, if anyone's going cam, I mean it's going to be a Raven. I mean, as he was brought in to do, he hasn't really been available, which has been a problem. But now he should be getting back, and also will be getting Spartan back as well.
The only thing I'd like to say before we move on is that Dortmund, I got to do some home cooking myself. We're figuring out the defensive end, and we're finally scoring some goals. We got 4 on Bayern Munich tonight in a makeup game. We got Ligue up there, of course, doing his thing. And then we just also have some other people that are now finally contributing. And I think if we can continue to figure out that offense, I don't see why we can't hang in there with Orlando and Real, assuming they keep up their form.
You gotta love a little bit of inform league.
Got to. I mean, when he's playing the way he can play, it's tough to beat. Real Madrid saw that volley from outside the box that absolutely devastating. So
that sadly signaled the end of Lopez's Real Madrid career.
All right, well, let's take a look at the bottom 9 for League One. In 10th place with 24 points, tied with Braga's Bayern Munich. 11th, we have LAFC. 12th, we have Schalke. 13th, we have Leicester City. 14th, we have Marseille. 15th, it's Roma with 12 points. Lille's just behind them, tied with 12 points, but a worse goal differential. 17th is Chivas. And then 18th is Wolfsburg. All right, so of that bottom 9, what are the teams that you're surprised at that are there?
Leo. I am just in awe with Leo. Being in 3rd place last season, almost coming close, getting promoted, just going back down to 16th. It surprises me.
I don't believe it's the same roster as last season.
Oh,
I might be
fair.
wrong.
If it is the same roster, I'm just in shock.
But it is a team that I thought would be higher up than they are.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. There's kind of a separation there. The 10 through 12 are all teams that could push into mid-table, maybe promotion if things go right. Especially, I think Bayern. I think it's a team that's hit a little bit of a rough patch. But 13th through 16th are separated by a point, and then Chivas are a little below that, and then Wolfsburg below that. So it's an interesting mix because there's teams like LAFC and Schalke that are doing well in 11th and 12th that are pretty much new. And they got even goal difference. They're pretty much even on results. They're for what they are. They're probably happy with where they are. And then you got teams below them: Leicester. There's a new Marseille team, Roma, Lille, Chivas. I think it's gonna be another interesting. Wolfsburg are the one team really struggling down there. But I think other than that, I think it's gonna be 5-6 teams in a relegations battle. And then I think to me, Bayern's the one team I expect has the potential to get it going. But I know they're in a bit of a rough patch and we'll see if they can get it going or not, or if they're maybe going to be mid-table this season, which would be a disappointment for them, I think.
Yeah, they started off hot, and they definitely kind of cooled off a little bit. We featured them in a marquee matchup when they were towards the top of that top 9, and just kind of fell out of form, not really sure what's going on there.
If LAFC win the 2 games that they haven't played, we could see them jumping all the way up to 8. And same with Leicester. They could separate themselves a little bit from that relegation battle.
Yeah, there's a few teams there with sitting at 15 games that could move up. You mentioned 2. You got Lille and Chivas as well. They could easily move up, barring the results of those games. I do think there's at least 6 teams there that are going to be competing for that relegation battle, and it's unfortunate competition, but I think that's the nature of the beast right now.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is there was the Marseille and Roma split about 2.5 weeks ago, where about half of Marseille went to Roma, and Roma hasn't really started to pick up results, and then Marseille eventually had to fold. So it's a new Marseille team. So it's a team that had about 24 people on the roster. It got promoted last year from League Two. Now you're seeing they split into 2. One team's already folded, the other one's struggling to get out of relegation zone. So it's it's a case where one team became 2, and now both are struggling. And if Lille and Chivas start to pick up results in those games in hand, you could see both those teams getting relegated, which would be kind of unfortunate.
All right. Well, with that, we will move on to League Two, taking a look at the top 6. We've got Wolverhampton in first with a game in hand, 39 points. Fiorentina sitting there in second with 37 points. Barcelona just behind them in third. And we have Napoli, Newcastle United, and Celtic rounding out the top 6. So who do you think, it looks like there's 2 teams currently not running away with it, but positioning themselves up top. But then Barcelona and Napoli are sitting right behind them. Who do you guys think are going to end up taking this home?
Wolves will more than likely win the league. I say that fairly confident. They've been the best team all season. The number 2 spot, that's a toss-up between Barcelona and Fiorentina. Those are the big 3 in League Two. The number 4 spot's really what I think the rest of the league would be chasing at a chance for promotion. I think the top 3 have pretty much settled themselves away from everybody else. I know points-wise they're close, but level of play, there's a notable difference when you play those teams.
Yeah, I think so. From someone who's just observed this season, Fiorentina as a team, they're kind of the outlier in that top 4 in that they have the best offense, but they have by far the worst defense. Does their defense seem soft, or is it just that they maybe don't have the numbers that they need to really compete?
The 2 times that we played them, they actually blanked us out and beat us 2-0 both times. So I'm not sure. It seems like every in League Two, it seems like you're going to have one game where the wheels just fall off. Every team's almost had that except for Wolves. And then Fiorentina, they signed. Didn't they sign Elements recently?
Mm-hmm.
Which should really revamp that attack and make them even more deadly up top.
Yeah, and it's interesting hearing you say that those top 3 kind of separating themselves, because I've heard of a lot of kind of internal issues at Napoli, and there was kind of a split. A couple players wanted to leave, maybe didn't leave, and then there's.
I saw them looking for. They were looking for a center mid, center back, and CDM, I believe. So, I noticed that Celtic is one that's really improved from the beginning of the season. I will say that. From the first time we played them to now, they've got a really good squad. So I'm interested to see what happens there.
Yeah, and Newcastle was the team that early on was on a really good run, but it seems like they just haven't consistently been able to field more than about 7 or 8 the last couple of weeks, and they've slipped a lot farther down to the table. So it seems like it's a good group of players, but they haven't been able to really recruit and get the depth they need to kind of compete. And they're not out of the promotion race, but they got to make some moves if they're going to get in there again.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see. Yeah, King Snow has been a tough team as well. Again, we're new to the league this year. Wolves is the team that they're truly running away with the league. It's pretty astounding to play against them. We got up early on them last time we played them, and then they just rolled us on the offensive end. Their attack is it's a step above everyone else in the league.
Yeah, it seems like they're the team with the best combination as far as very strong attack and then the best defense. So when you got those 2 things, it's hard to not see them running away with it moving forward. But you got to give credit for Fiorentina. They just need to figure out that defense if they're going to end up taking over that top spot.
That would be the only knock against them as a team, would be the defense. Against us, they played great, but against some of the lower level teams, it looks like they've allowed some goals in on. You're just not seeing that from the other top teams in the league.
I wonder if that's a lack of focus or if that's a lack of not getting everyone on. Not easy to diagnose that without being in their camp, but it does seem like they need to figure something out if they're going to keep pace. And Barcelona is right behind them. They just have a little bit of a weaker offense, but the much stronger defense. And if you have that stronger defense, you're able to withstand the long haul of that season. All right, well, let's take a look at the bottom six for League Two. Sitting in seventh place, tied with Celtic with 25 points, but with a worse goal differential is Atletico Madrid. Eighth place is PSV. Ninth place is Ajax. FC Porto is sitting in 10th. Everton in 11th. And then 12th is Sporting with 7 points. Now, there's no relegation battle here, so there's not really that in play. But what teams do you think could potentially make a run? Is there anything you're seeing from any of these camps that suggests that they're better than what their record shows?
FC Porto just had a manager takeover, and we friendlied them tonight, and they're looking strong for having a new manager. I was impressed by them, so I looked them to rise up a little bit. Ajax kind of got off to a slow start this season, but they seem like they're putting on a tough team every time they play. PSV, Aiken's got them going. They're playing every night. They're improving. I look to see them as well. They're going to get better. And then for my own team at Atletico, we're trying new things out. We realize it's midway through our first season in PCN, so trying to figure out our groove. We recently just switched to the 3-5-2, trying to mimic some of the Super League teams. And I think the top four are the top four, the bottom half. You could see some movement there. Everton, they put on 11 every game, but from what I've heard, this is their first season as well. So maybe some first season hiccups. Sporting's the real surprise because coming into this, they had the most experience from some of the teams that were in League Two. So I'm a little surprised by that.
Yeah, I think I'm a little surprised by them as well. And them and Everton, but there's really, in the three at the bottom, they only have 9, 9, and 7. But they're also, you look at the results and you look at if you look at the games they played, they have some bad games here and there that make the goal difference kind of go up. But they also put up fights, every other game day. They're putting one really good game in at least, and so. I'm not going to say that the teams at the bottom of League Two are going to be competing in the Cup and would be competing in League One, League Two, or League One and Super League. But it's good to see that those teams are, they're not just playing 5 people, losing 9-0 every game day. They're going to stick it out, and then there's teams above them in PSV and Ajax that seem like they're trying to get it figured out, trying to figure out what they're doing. And then obviously you at Atletico, you're 8 points out of promotion, so it's not likely, but it's not out of the question that you could make a run at that point if you get on a run here in the second half.
Something we've kind of set as the goal for the second half of the season, because we like to have obviously we'd love to make it the 1 or 2 spot, but realistically, we're shooting for the number 4 spot because there's too many games that we believe that those top 3 teams will win. So that 4 spot is really what we're shooting for to get into the playoff with whomever to try to get that promotion. So I think anybody from Ajax up really has a chance at that 4 spot and getting promoted. It's still anybody's game from 4 to 9, I truly believe.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. The points are there. You're not too far behind 4th. I think the Celtic and Newcastle, they do have Celtic has 2 games in hand. Newcastle has 1. So that's one thing that could pole vault them up there. But it's still a fair amount of games left in this season. So there's plenty of time to turn that around and make it to that 4th spot. But if there is any kind of turmoil in these camps, I think that's one thing that could easily springboard one of those teams sitting just outside the playoff.
I would agree with that. I haven't heard anything other than, just what I've seen in the trials for Napoli. But again, it truly is a toss up there and very competitive. I will say that. I was expecting quite a big drop off from League One to League Two, but the talent's there's some really, really solid teams in League Two.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing the quality be built up there as the seasons go on, and I think the further that it goes on, in PCN, get to Season 12, Season 13, League 2 is going to become just as competitive as League 1 is this season. So I think it's just a matter of time until you see competitiveness throughout here. All right, well, we will turn to the last topic, which began on Sunday with the transfer window opening. So let's just talk about some of the transfers that you've seen, that you think you're going to see. Anything out there that kind of surprised you, or what have you guys heard?
Things happen. People like to move and like do things. Yeah.
At Spurs, there's actually one transfer that I can confirm now that definitely is a big one. Apocryphion is going to Atlanta. They're going to buy out his contract.
Yeah, I heard that was going on. Then I heard the corresponding move is Khan is coming over to my squad over at Dortmund. So there's a dual effect there. I think Khan was a little bit surprised that he got benched.
Yeah, as someone who's played both Atlanta and Spurs this year, Apoc's clearly, come on the scene and been a really good keeper. But to me, for Atlanta to make that move, it's a risk. I don't know. Khan's been really good. He's been really steady. I don't think goalkeeping is the issue with Atlanta. And speaking of Atlanta, the other big move they've made is they've gotten talentless from Liverpool.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever the talentless goes to a new team, you never know how it's gonna go. He's a character and he's a good player. But with the way he fits into a new team, it changes every time.
Going back on the Khan situation, I mean, I guess I would say I have inside information, but I don't know if I really want to talk all that. But it's with talking about it with Exile, it was definitely a move that was more character based than perform. It had performance in it as well, but there was just some stuff going on the side, and they weren't able to resolve it.
Speaking of goalkeepers changing teams, I believe Veggie may be on the move as well to Lyon.
Yeah, we'll see. Milan's an interesting situation. I don't want to get too much into it, but it looks like Rio's going to be going to League 1 on loan to play striker, and maybe some changing of the guard in terms of co-manager, and we're trying to figure out some things there. I hope Veggie doesn't leave, and I don't think we're trying to get rid of him, but I know teams are interested in him because I think they see him not playing all the time. I think the really interesting rumor that may or may not come true is the potential Eric coming to Milan, which would change obviously the lineup around a little bit for us. Maybe it may mean someone moving to the midfield or something like that. But that's the other kind of storyline for me is it's sort of like the Minnesota players that were banned last season. They got the half-season ban. They can sign after Wednesday, and it looks like Eric may be coming to Milan. It looks like Kessie and Twinkie are going to Juve. Looks like Realms is going to start playing again, kind of self-imposed a ban for this first half of the season. So Milan and Juve may be the two teams that benefit the most from those suspensions ending. But there have been a lot of moves, really. And I think there's teams that are in the relegation battle, like a team like in America. You've seen them be active already. And I think it's two ends. I think the teams in the relegation zone trying to strengthen and figure out their end. And then I think teams in the title race trying to add that last piece or two to kind of push on from there in each league. So, the window's only 1 week, but I think you're going to see very different teams tonight than you do a week from now.
Yeah, that's definitely a situation we're in. We definitely feel we're a pace or two away from where we want to be. So we're definitely active in that way. And I mean, also with somebody like APOC leaving too, it's a big change. So we'll of course be looking to bring in another goalie to compete with YouTube, who has been playing really well.
There's already been 18 transfers in this period so far. It's been extremely active, and then you also have to add in the loans that have been going on. There's 7 of those, so 25 people have decided to move on to greener pastures or just a different environment or different people. It's very interesting to see. I don't think it's, at least since I've been paying attention to it, hasn't been this active before mid-season.
No, and I think so. This is just one part where, as an admin, I have insight. We've had the contract buyouts probably since season 4 or so, and we just felt like the last couple of seasons they were really creating kind of a talent imbalance towards the end of the season, where you were seeing teams at the top of the table just basically buying out the the best players on teams lower in the table. And we also had we didn't have any transfer limits for a long time, and then for a couple seasons we had the 4 teams max. Well, this season we changed the contract buyouts rules. We made that stricter. We also limited it to 3 teams max. And so I think what we wanted to do was increase the importance of the transfer window. We wanted it to be a more meaningful period for, this is when you're going to move as a player. And I did not expect this. I did not expect 25 different transfers within 24 hours. So I think for us as a league, that's what we want to see. Is we want to see players sticking it out for half a season, but then deciding, hey, now is my chance to move to a lower league to help out this team, or to move up, because I've improved myself, or to help out this team in relegation, help out this team win a title. So from our perspective, I love it. I love that it's now the transfer window. It's not perfect, but I think it's working better now than it ever has before.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. You have more of an actual transfer window as opposed to teams just switching, or players switching willy-nilly whenever they feel like it. Now they're kind of waiting for this right moment, which I think is exactly what you were looking for when you made that change.
Yep.
Well, from the manager perspective, it's nice to be able to loan out players to possibly, see how they improve throughout the rest of the season, and when they come back, see if they've fit the team better, or what you need to do without having to cut them, because that's always tough.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to go, is to loan someone out. Is it someone you like, that you enjoy playing with, but there's just not quite space for them right this second. But they get loaned out, get some playing time, and then they can come back and hopefully be a contributor.
I think one team that's done that kind of the most this season would be Atlanta. They, Argentina's the guy I think they want to bring back next season, who's been at Monaco. And they also just loaned Platypus, or P Squared, Preston, down there to Monaco as well. And then it looks like I see a Fuji post up going down there to Dortmund. So Atlanta's got some extra players, but they recognize their long-term value. And this is the most this is the most loan signings I think I've seen this quickly. Leon's got a couple out as well. So yeah, this is what we want to see with a window. We want to see it replicate real life. We want to see big moves, big signings, but only kind of in the window.
Right, I think that's playing out perfectly, and you're actually seeing teams like Atlanta and Leon that are building up their talent pool by giving people playing time that aren't necessarily going to earn it on the starting squad, which you see in real life. So I think that's kind of a fascinating event that's kind of occurring this season. All right. Well, I want to thank all of y'all for joining me tonight. Dorsey, I want to thank you. I want to thank all the panelists for joining and submitting their applications and having something to discuss for each league. Truly appreciate it. I hope everyone enjoyed the podcast at home. Everyone take care until next week.